Hello, everyone, and welcome to what amounts to Recruiting Christmas, the new Recruiting Christmas. Happy National Signing Day to all those who celebrate. John Maddox, joined by the best co-hosts in all the land, Bryan Moss and Larry Marley. Bryan, we will start with you. Today is your day to shine. You are our Mel Kiper Jr. of college football recruiting. How are you, my friend?
Doing pretty good. It was an exciting day for Memphis today. There was a signing day surprise both ways. You know, ones that flipped away from Memphis, but one that flipped to Memphis. So overall, to me, it's a decent day.
Hard to have a bad day when you get better. Larry, how are things in the palatial Marley Manor?
Well, they couldn't be better actually because I got all my stuff done today and I'm off until the new year. So I have doesn't mean I'm not going to work, but it just means that I don't have to work. And of course tomorrow all hell breaks loose as far as weather. Correct, John? So yeah.
So protect the peas, pets, plants, pipes, and people. It's going to be really, really cold starting tomorrow. We'll get to what the weather is going to look like in Dallas here in a few minutes as we head to the first responder. My apologies to the fine folks in Dallas. It is not first responders. It is first responder. No plural. Ball. All right. So back to signing day. Talked to a very seemingly relaxed Ryan Silverfield this afternoon at his press conference. Found out, in fact, he has not seen Avatar. He had no idea what that was. The team, we were talking at the end, and the team voted on a movie. They voted between Black Panther and Avatar. And so the team voted for Avatar. And then when Ryan Silverfield was informed that it was 3 hours and 15 minutes, he said, I'll either be asleep or watching film in the theater. So, but no, he was relaxed today, and good reason, Bryan. 22 new Tigers officially in the fold today. Who jumps off the page at you for Memphis with the new signees?
Yeah, for me, first and foremost, it's the signing day surprise. The kid with the best last name out of all of them, Moss. The defensive back from Shreveport. He's one that when you take a look at, I think Memphis really needed. They really need a defense back, and he's now it'd be interesting to see where he plays because he can play anywhere in the secondary. So I'm interested to see if he's truly going to be a safety, which I think that's where his best position at. But he can also play, corner for you. But with Quindell leaving, I think it was very important to get Marjavius Moss, and so for me, it was really important to get him because he had some Power Five offers. Mississippi State, Oklahoma State. I think Vanderbilt also offered. So he was one that Memphis needed, and Memphis got him.
Yeah, Minnesota and Baylor, I believe, as well on Moss's list. Big time pickup. Let's just kind of run through the recruits here. It's hot off the presses, and I think I'm even missing a couple here. These are in alphabetical order. Reed Bauer, a punter from Magnolia, Texas, of course, played at Arkansas. He's a young man that comes in. He's the 2021 Peter Mortelli Holder of the Year award winner. So living up to that long line of interesting Memphis characters here that we've had that have won that award. And that's a position, guys, that, Larry, that Memphis needs because you've got Joe Doyle, who has been so solid moving on. And to me, this is what the transfer portal was built for, right? Like to get specialists, and I mean, you can get other players, but like if you need a punter, kicker, or Coach Silverfield even said today, if you need a quarterback, those are the guys you go for in the portal and find a little easier.
Yeah, it's so if you have a guy who is, say, and this is a great example, a guy who does something that you specifically need. Like when we've all talked about, like our kicker is leaving, right? Chris, Howard is leaving. So there's another example of an opening. You have a specific opening and you look for something specific to fill. Another example for this would be a pass rushing specialist, a third down back, somebody like that. That's what the portal is for. Go and say, this guy has a history. We know he can do this. It's not, and Bryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's not to go out and find someone to develop necessarily. It's to go out and find someone who's already doing it. Is that? I mean, I think that's
Yeah, I
what.
mean, that's theoretically. I mean, that's what staffs want. I mean, if you're looking into the portal, you need someone that's a plug and play. You don't need someone that you could develop, because that's for someone to develop. That's a high schooler.
Right. And to a degree, and guys, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, or just chime in. In a lot of ways, the transfer portal has sort of taken the place of what junior college used to be, which is, you go and you see this guy is doing this. Here's what he can do, and he fits what I'm looking to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for, and Coach Schofield talked about it, the balance, though, right? Of, he said there are programs that go out and fill up with transfers, and he said that's a good way to gut your roster. He said it's just not sustainable to keep turning over and turning over and turning over. So you've got to find that balance. In this class, Memphis, and he said this too. He said at some point we're going to quit calling this the early signing period and just start calling February the late signing period. He said the estimates right now are about 80% of high school kids that are going to sign in this period. So it's not the early period anymore. You have 5 offensive linemen, 5 defensive linemen, 4 defensive backs, 4 linebackers, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, and a punter. And I asked him about the offensive line because I thought that was an interesting, some interesting pickups there. Guys like Malachi Breland, guys that can play center, guard, tackle. He said, yeah, that was really a point of emphasis because, you carry 15 offensive linemen roughly, and through injuries or attrition, and he pointed the defensive line last year at Memphis. He said coming out of spring ball, we were great. And then we had no depth once the season got started. So, it's a balancing act, but you've also Breland, Jamari Chisholm, Xavier Hill, Derek Hunter Jr., Shatavius Johnson, Chris Morris, Carmelo Overton, Parker Peterson, Marcus Tillman Jr., and Devin Walton. Trevor Walton will all enroll in the spring for Memphis. Bryan, what is the advantage there for a recruit? Maybe not even from the Memphis perspective, but even from the other side, what it would have been a big advantage for a recruit to come in and join what we call being an early enrollee?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge jump. I mean, if you think about it, where would Memphis where would they be last season had Seth Hennigan not enrolled early? Now you're really relying on a true freshman starting who only has a month, underneath their belt in your system. So get him in early. That knowledge of the playbook. If the kid, like Seth, I use Seth as an example because he really came in here, put his nose in the books, and learned the playbook. Bonded with his teammates, with his receivers, and I truly think that helped him tremendously in his first year. So, as a player, getting in early, learning the playbook, getting acclimated with a college program, because you're working out with your teammates, and you're working out at a college level, not just a high school level. So your strength and conditioning, your dietitian or nutritionist, I mean, everything is just amplified, and you have a good 6 months ahead of the kids that are coming into the fall. So especially if there's going to be position battles, the kids who sign early, they have that much of an advantage, coming into the fall camp. And with spring, I mean, you get to participate in the spring, spring camp, spring practice. That's huge for a player.
Yeah, that's where that's where a lot of, to use a golf analogy here, they say you can't win the tournament on Thursday, but you can sure as hell lose it. And that's the same thing to me with getting that advantage to come into spring camp. You're not going to come in and, most of the time blow everybody's doors off and automatically get a starting gig, but that's where you can show yourself a little bit and kind of show who you are. Memphis got
and you also
bigger.
pick up speed, John. You pick
Yeah.
up the speed of college as opposed to high school. I personally was I thought it was hard for a kid academically to come in and do that. But as far as from a football standpoint, you guys are 100% correct. Like, that is a huge advantage to come in. You get to know the teammates, you get to see the speed of the game. And when you come in the fall, that 2 or 3 weeks that it takes, or certainly a week and a half that it takes to adapt to the college game is gone. You don't need that because like you're right there in it. You already know, and also the how it's more of a job in college than it is in high school.
Yeah, because you're not the big man on campus anymore. Everybody here was the big man on campus at any point in time. A couple guys that I'm really interested in. I'm very interested in. Just lost my place in my book here. Oh, there it is. I'm interested in Blake Watson because I thought that was an interesting pickup for a lot of reasons. Watson's the 5'9", 195-pound back out of Old Dominion. Started 24 games at ODU, 2,100 yards on 398 attempts and 14 touchdowns and 60 catches for 448 yards. I thought that was interesting because if there is a section, Bryan, and I know this probably turned one recruit away, but that there is a part of the roster that I feel like Memphis kind of felt pretty good about themselves, not really needing to go out and get a running back. That's probably one thing I feel like the staff was pretty confident they had a good handle on. But I think Watson's the kind of guy, if you have a chance to get somebody dynamic like that, you just go get him and let the rest kind of sort itself out.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a depth player. I should say he's definitely a depth player for Memphis, but his talent is better than a depth player. I mean, you're getting a starter to be, technically your backup at this point, because we'll have to wait and see, during next year spring and fall camps and see who emerges. But yeah, Memphis is just stockpiling running backs. I mean, to me, that's not a position of need. Like you said, and I believe Silverfield said it today. If you have a kid, you may not be looking for that particular position, but if he's a character kid and if he can help your team, he can help your team. I mean, you may not need that position, so you need to move other stuff around. I mean, there's stuff you could do. There's some running backs on the roster that has played other positions, so that's definitely a possibility. But yeah, Watson is one of that. I mean, he had. I'm not sure he had 1,000 yards this year, but he had 1,000 yards last year. I mean, he was. I think he had 970 something yards this year. So I mean, he was close. But yeah, to add 1,000-yard running rusher to your roster, I mean, that's pretty big. You're muted.
I think you'll take that anytime you can get it. Another guy that Coach Silverfield talked a lot about, because I asked him kind of the opposite question that Frank Bonner asked, about the relationship side of this business. And one of the guys he spoke about was Chris Morris. This is somebody Coach Silverfield has known, he said, literally since he was a pup. Like he was, he's known because Ryan's been here 7 years. Like people, I think, kind of get lost on the fact he's been here a long time. And he talked about how that's important to build these relationships. Chris Morris, 6'4", 290 pounds, offensive lineman out of West Memphis High School and Hutchinson Community College, which is one of the preeminent junior college programs in the country, in Hutchinson, Kansas, which if you ever have the chance to go there, don't. That's where the junior college basketball tournament is. I've been there 3 times. And regretted it every single time. But no, seriously, he's a good player, and he's somebody that, Coach Silverfield, he said, I've known him for 7 years. I knew him before he got to high school. Like he's, and that's another kid that if you saw some of the pictures floating around today, he's excited to come to Memphis. And I think that's underrated too, right, Larry? Like kids love to be where they're wanted, and you also want kids that are excited to be where they are. And I think that's critical.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And one of the things that we've talked about in the past was, and we talked about Justin Fuente earlier because he for those who don't know, he's going to be doing the show, doing the play-by-play, or actually the color, right? For this,
yeah, for the radio broadcast,
right?
Yeah.
For the radio broadcast. Well, anyway, so Justin was one of those guys, and Bryan, you've talked about it in the past, who would only recruit guys who showed interest in the program, right? That's not always the case, but that was Justin's philosophy back then. And there is a lot to be said for a kid, like like myself, who goes to a program, is just he's happy to be there. He's happy to have the opportunity, and he knows he's going to plug himself in, be whatever that the team needs, and do whatever it takes, to be successful and help the team be successful. That's what you're actually talking about, is chemistry there, and that adds a lot to the chemistry. And those are great players to have, John. But at the end of the day, it's also really good to have guys that are really, really talented. That helps a lot. You know what I mean? So, and you mentioned this earlier, John, balance. Having a bunch of guys that it's great if you have somebody who's really talented and who also wants to be here. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you have a guy who looks around and goes, this was the best offer I could get. I'm not thrilled to be to Memphis. I would much rather be going to, Tennessee or Auburn. But, and so you don't want too many of those guys either, right? You want a guy that's talented enough to go to Auburn, but you'd really like a guy who's talented enough to go to Auburn and wants to be here.
Yeah, and I mean that is the balance I think that you have to strike, and you have to, Bryan, like if you look back at Paxton Lynch, that's a guy that Memphis took a chance on, right? Like he was injured in his senior year of high school, he played single wing, and ended up being a great choice. But I do think that that's part of the balance too, is you have to take some chances on some guys. So maybe who's somebody in this class that you think, Moss is going to get a lot of the headlines, but who's somebody maybe a little under the radar that, not really a stretch, that's not the word I'm looking for, but is somebody that fans are maybe underappreciating a little bit?
To me, there's can be a couple, because when you take a look at their rivals rankings, they're not rated very high. But someone like Jamari Chisholm, tight end out of Hutchinson, he's not gonna, he's a tight end, but when people will look at his stats, well, he didn't catch a lot of balls. He's a run blocking tight end, and those type of players, their stats are not gonna pop out at you, but they're mighty important. I mean, I think that's one thing that Sean Dykes was did well. I think Sean Dykes was pretty good at run blocking, but for him, that's the first guy that pops in my head. Another one, maybe linebacker C.J. Johnson, another kid that is committed, but he hasn't signed just yet, is Radrian McNeely. Watch for him. If they get him sometime, between now and February, he's another kid. He's a running back, shifty, but but is explosive. So I mean, there's a few there that not highly rated by rivals, but could definitely help your team.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what I'm talking about with the kind of the getting lucky every now and then. We talk about it all year about, well, how did Georgia win so many games? Well, they got lucky a couple times. Well, how did Memphis end up in the Cotton Bowl? They got lucky. How Tulane? Because you have to have a little bit of luck, and recruiting's kind of that way too. You've got to kind of get more hits than misses. And look, here's the reality of the situation. You're going to miss guys. It's going to happen. Transfer portal only amplifies that. You're going to miss guys, and you're going to take a guy that you thought was a character guy, and he gets here and falls in love with a girl and goes off the deep end. And great news, guys, we have a new private dating chat in our YouTube comments there. That's kind of what made me think of that. But seriously, that's, that is what you have to understand. And I've seen a lot of Memphis fans just beside themselves with this. I literally saw this comment today. This is the worst recruiting job Silverfield's ever done. Well, that's like saying that's the worst ribeye steak I've ever had. Like, it's still pretty dang good. And,
Yeah.
Numerically, no, it's probably not. And I think some of that, what some of the fans don't really get with the recruiting side of it, guys, right, is it's not, and I tell people this about basketball all the time with the NCAA tournament, and they're like, well, why is Memphis of this? And why? It's not always about you. Like, who's the running back that flipped to Louisiana today?
Broussard.
So from the outside, it is, oh, Memphis just lost a recruit to Louisiana. Well, that's true, but is that a byproduct of Memphis either backing off because they feel good with what they've got and what they feel like they will keep? Or is that a kid being smart and making what I call a business decision and reading the room and going, you know what? There's 4 guys there. I might not get on the field, and deciding to go somewhere else. So it's not always about, oh, Memphis got out recruited by, is it Caleb Black that ended up at East Carolina today? Yeah, I think it's Caleb
Bond.
Bond. I'm sorry, it was Bond, Black, and Broussard that all flipped today to somewhere other than Memphis. So it's not always about you. It's about kids reading the room sometimes and understanding, you know, that this may not be the best fit for them, or the coaching staff may go to them and say, look, you know, we love you. We think you'd be a great fit, but, you know, let's be real. We got 3 other guys in front of you. And people don't believe when I say this, coaches do it all the time. Hey, why don't you call Coach XYZ over at so-and-so? And that's how the game works. Like it's a duh, but that's how the game works. And, you know, that's what I wish fans would kind of step back off the ledge and see, is that it is not always about you and what you're doing. It's about kids making different decisions. It's about the staff going, you know what, you know, and I'm not saying this is what happened, but maybe Blake Watson falls in your lap and you're like, oh, I can only have so many running backs, and you know, I feel like he can help me more than this guy can. So it's not always about the numbers, and you know, Larry, your point is valid in that, yes, it's a lot easier to coach. What was Bear Bryant's old saying? It's not about the X's and O's. It's or Bobby Bowden, not the X's and O's, but the Jimmies and Joes. And that's true, but I think and Jeb's right. That's the Memphis football Facebook mafia. But I think that's true too, that yes, you want the best players you can get, but sometimes you have to, as a staff, right? You have to make a decision.
Yeah, because you can only have 85 scholarship players. And, you know, what if you have a need at another position? You know,
Right.
you're gonna have to let a kid go somewhere else because it's not a position of need. So when you see 2 running backs or 2 athletes that were most likely running backs on your team, you know, leave for other schools, running back is not a position of need. I mean, fans have to realize that there's other positions, like O-line was a position of need, defensive line was a position, safeties was a position. There's other positions that Memphis needed out of this recruiting class more than running backs. So yeah, it's definitely not in the end of the world. I mean, honestly, take a look. I know fans got used to back-to-back best recruiting classes ever. I've preached it. You know, Silverfield has mentioned it. You take those 2 classes out, this class right here is ranked 62nd. It's the 3rd best in Memphis history. You throw in the last 2 classes, it's still, as of right now, it's the 5th best ever. And I mean, you know, if you take a look at Norvell was a great recruiter. Norvell only had 1 recruiting class better than what Memphis signed today. So I mean, just some food for thought.
Yeah,
I just think that, and we talked about this off the air, and I'm not saying that the Memphis fans are right. I'm saying I'm gonna put my Memphis fan hat on and say, look, one of the things that Memphis fans are looking at going, we've had a slippage on the field in terms of wins and losses. Is that slippage translating to the recruiting? And is the fact that we're not winning as many games affecting our ability to bring in players? And if you're, and again, I'm not saying they're right, Bryan. I'm saying that's what those fans may be pointing to.
Yeah, and that's just looking at it at face value at the number. Well, instead of 47th and 49th, yeah, we're you know, Memphis is 62, so obviously we're slipping. But it's case by case, and like we were mentioning off air, and I said the transfer portal does not come into play in these rankings. So when you take a Blake Watson, who's nearly back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher, who was I think all conference as well. what would his star ranking be? Minimum 3. So if you throw in those, and Rivals will do that in the future, just it's not here yet, but they'll have it to where the star rankings will play into the role of the team rankings. So you'll see that in future years, and I think once you see that, a lot of this will go away. Of the this class is not as good as previous years, when that's just not the case, because you have to remember what Memphis brought in the transfer portal.
6 foot, 215 pound, played 14 games in 2 seasons at East Tennessee State. 2022 freshman All-American honoree, led the team with 99 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, and 3.5 sacks in 2022 in 10 games. That's Chandler Martin, a linebacker from East Tennessee State. So we didn't get better at linebacker today because the kid doesn't have a star next to his name. This is where we all kind of have a difference, I think, and it's funny that we're with a recruiting service, and I always poo-poo recruiting stars. It's about getting better, right? Like at the end of the day, that's all it is about, is getting better and getting and improving in areas we needed to. We needed to get better up front, both sides of the ball. We needed depth up front. We need to get better at safety, and we need to get better at linebacker. 5 offensive linemen, 5 defensive linemen, couple linebackers, couple defensive backs. I'll never understand what people want, but that's why we have a podcast and we are not coaches, because we can't handle the stress. Joining us now, we're going to shift gears quite a bit very suddenly. Patrick Mahorn from the Ag Ship will join us now and talk a little bit about the first Responder, no S, Responder Bowl. Again, apologies to all those fine folks. Utah State, Memphis, coming your way on Tuesday. Patrick, welcome into the program.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I have, don't worry, I have also gotten first responder wrong about 20 times already. It is, it happens. It happens here.
Happens to the best of us and to me. All right. So, my knowledge of Utah State is that they play in Logan, Utah, and that Merlin Olsen went there. So what else do we need to know about Utah State?
Well, it has been it's been a year full of things to know about Utah State, I would say. This was a season coming in that a lot of people had a lot of very high expectations for. Of course, Utah State won the Mountain West last season for the first time in program history in the first year under head coach Blake Anderson. Brought back a lot of that team, including Logan Bonner at quarterback, and then started this season 1-4. Lost to an FCS team that it very, very rarely loses to, in-state opponent in Weber State. Logan Bonner got hurt after 5 games. They turned over to a backup quarterback. And after starting 1-4, won what would be 5 of their next 7 to get to bowl eligibility. Won it. Got there in 11 games rather than 12. It has been up and down. It has been very up and down. They have had a lot of very, very high moments, a lot of very low moments. Getting to a bowl game was an achievement in itself, and is something that they're very pleased with. But it has also been a season that was really not expected to be filled with as much hardship as it has been. They've sort of had to shift into a youth movement of sorts. The team has a lot of things to be excited about here. There are a lot of pieces on the team that people like, but it has not been the season that Utah State was really kind of hoping it would be.
Bryan, before you go here, any of this sound familiar? I'm picking up some familiar themes here.
When you take a look at the Utah State team, it seems that they're a better running team than a passing team. When you take a look at this matchup for the bowl game, do you think that Utah State needs to improve in passing, or do you think they can win the game just by their rushing attack?
So the rushing attack has been a little bit strange this year as well. They really did not run the ball well to start the season, but the move to Cooper Legat, quarterback, has helped that out a lot. He's a much better runner in general than Logan Bonner was, but Logan Bonner, especially when he was hurt at the beginning of the year, he had sort of a bum ankle. The rushing attack just does not work without a running quarterback. The way that it's designed, it just doesn't function. And so having Cooper in there has helped a lot. And Calvin Tyler Jr., who has been around football for a long time, been around college football for a long time. I think he's a 5th-year senior. This is going to be his last game. He's from Texas, so it's his last game in his home state. And he's played really, really well down the stretch. He has been sort of a revelation for the rushing attack. He was the starter, but was struggling to begin the year. I think that they do expect to be able to run the ball. The line has not been amazing against better defensive lines that they've played. Wyoming caused a lot of problems. Boise State caused a lot of problems, and so as much as they would love to be able to do that, and they will be able to, rely on Calvin, rely on Cooper for individual big gains of sorts, they do need to be able to pass the ball here. It's not really been the kind of rushing attack that can just grind out yards against good defenses or against good lines. It's just not had that sort of down-to-down efficiency. The line has been inconsistent. It's young. It's got some new starters. And the passing attack, it really does need to be getting up and going, because this is, as much as the rushing attack has sort of driven the offense this year, this is supposed to be a pass-first offense. This is supposed to be an offense that is driven by an efficient short yardage passing attack, RPOs. Utah State's basically the entire offensive staff comes from the Josh Heupel tree or is related to that offense in some way. Anthony Tucker worked for him at UCF. Blake Anderson has obviously been around the air raid, has been around that sort of system for a long time, and they would really like to be able to do that. And they have had moments where they can do that offensively this year, but they've had other moments where wide receivers just have not gotten open. And so it kind of comes down to winning those matchups on the outside, and whether they will do that is still not really super easy to predict for this team. I've seen them, I've watched them play 12 games now. I still don't really know what to expect from these receivers. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they aren't, and it's really, they need them to be good. They need the guys on the outside to be good. They need Bryan Cobbs to be good. I would say they need Justin McGriff to be good, but that has not been especially common this year. And more important than anything else, they need Terrell Vaughn to be good, who is the sort of the de facto star of this offense now in the slot. He was fantastic against Boise State. Where he goes, the passing attack will follow.
So we are familiar with Blake Anderson, obviously from his time at Arkansas State, and we played Arkansas State while he was the coach. We also remember the horrible things that he went through with his wife, ultimately passing away. Catch Tiger fans up on how Blake's been doing since he went out to Utah State. How has he fit in, and how has he reshaped that program?
Yeah, from everything I have gathered in talking to Blake and talking to people close to Blake, this was a change of scenery that he needed at this point in his career, at this point in his life. He is very community oriented. He's very family oriented. And Logan is a place that I think suits him really well. It suits that sort of those needs really well. And from everything I have gathered, he has been getting the kind of support that he needed in where he is, and he's doing about as well as you could realistically hope for, given his circumstances. It's been a very, very difficult couple of years for him and his family. But he personally seems to be doing about as well, like I said, as you could hope for. As for building the program, it's starting to look a lot like a Blake Anderson football program. They bring in a lot of JUCOs. They develop them very well. They've been doing very well in the portal. There's a lot of Arkansas State influence on this roster. Some of them not playing, like Logan Bonner, who's out. Anthony Switzer as well, who was a safety at Arkansas State, is on the roster, but he's been hurt all year. A lot more Southern products on the roster than you would see. I mean, basically ever. You got a guy on Alabama on the roster. I don't think that's ever happened before. And they're getting there. They've got the big receivers like he had at Arkansas State. They've got the passing attack that wants to set up downfield throws with the short passing game. They've got athletes here that I don't think Utah State is very much accustomed to having. And that is already, that's what Blake Anderson wants to do. And that is what he is able to do. He just signed today a recruiting class that looks exactly like what you would expect from him. It's not there yet. It's not fully there. I think last year was a very sort of just kind of a confluence of a lot of things happening all at once to yield that title game. They're not fully there yet, consistency wise, but the bones are starting to look a lot like they did at Arkansas State on both sides of the ball, and just personnel wise in general. The athleticism is better. The team speed is better. They are very much working towards what he wants his program to be, and I think on the right path for that.
As I watched some tape this year, one thing that kind of jumped off the page with me is Utah State does a lot of fake punts. I think in the New Mexico game, they actually faked a punt for a first down and faked a field goal for a touchdown. And as we talked to Coach Silverfield about today, like it's a ball game, we can fully expect to see more stuff like that. So what's kind of is it more of a pick your spot kind of thing, or is that kind of a signature that he's trying to build that you never know what we're going to do when the ball's in the kicker's hands?
So the person that has been credited to, or the people that has been credited to, would be special teams coordinator Nick Perimsky and the quality control coach Bobby Dodd Jr. And they have done a spectacular job with this special teams, and it is absolutely more of it's a picking their spots. It's a what they have seen, taking advantage of it kind of thing. It is not necessarily that they have gone into these games thinking, well, we just need to try and spring one on them. They faked, like you said, they faked a punt and they faked a field goal. They faked 2 punts, I believe, against New Mexico. And they got both of them. They blocked a punt in 2 or 3 games this season. They've blocked an extra point. The special teams is very good, and it's very good specifically at taking advantage of things that it has seen on film. They scored a touchdown on a fake field goal in the New Mexico game that was specifically because they saw that New Mexico liked to stunt away from a gap on a field goal. They found that on they picked that out on tape and called it up. They do things on special teams like you would usually do on offense or defense, basically. But it's not so much that they go in planning on these huge trick plays, planning on, well, we got to get 1 or 2 every game. It's more if they see something in game preparation, and I've not dived fully into it yet to say if I've seen anything that would be, suitable for this game. But if they see anything from, Memphis's punt coverage, from Memphis's punt team in general, they're very good at blocking punts. From any of the special teams, it is absolutely something they would try to exploit. They're very, very good about it.
Looking at the defense now, the pass defense is, seems to be really good. They're only 26. I mean, they 26 in the nation in pass defense, but their rush defense seems like that gives them problems. Why do you think they have such a hard time stopping the run?
Well, for the last couple games, it has been that starting linebacker MJ Tafisi has been injured. He had a nerve issue in his neck against Wyoming. He's not played since. That was at the end of October. He was very important to the run defense, and that has been increasingly apparent over the last month or so. They really miss him. They've had 2 freshmen playing in that spot next to AJ Vongpachon, who he's a starter. He's a good starter. He's a senior, but he is not a run stopper. He is much more of the pass defending linebacker. And those freshmen have just struggled. And so it seemed like, and at the beginning of the season, there were issues filling gaps. There were issues with young guys just not knowing where to be. As soon as they finally got that figured out, MJ goes down, and now they have new guys figuring out where to be in the right gaps. It's not a scheme issue as much as it is just inexperience and poor timing, really. It's new guys needing to go into the starting lineup and not really knowing fully what to do in that place. They have a lot of young guys starting on the defense, a lot of young guys contributing on the defense. It is less an issue of defensive coordinator Ephraim Bonda's scheme and more an issue of 2 starting freshman linebackers or several season-ending injuries at defensive tackle or all sorts of things, all kinds of injuries that have put guys into spots that they're probably not ready to play yet. And I don't think it's going to be a whole lot better here in this game. The experience is not significantly better. There are some players coming back from injuries, but I don't know that Tafisi is going to be back. I'm not super confident that he will be. One of those freshmen has already entered the transfer portal, so they're down to 1 there in Max Alford. The one who left is Sione Moa. He was the lesser of the 2, but he is leaving. There are some inexperience issues that might be ironed out by the time that they have to prepare for this game, by the amount of practices that they can get down. But it's still just there's guys who aren't fully comfortable on a college football defense at this point yet.
Looking at your pass rush, and if I say the young man's name wrong, you've got one guy, Mr. Grishak. Did I say that
Yes,
name? Right?
yes,
Hey,
Dan,
look at me.
Dan Grishak, yes.
Yeah, Grishak. And then after that, you've got one guy with 4, and I'm just looking specifically at sacks, but hurries as well. Is your pass rush, which is usually indicative? You talked about the pass defense. That's usually indicative of where your pass defense is going. Has that been hit or miss? It just seems like it's obviously the Alabama game shifts some stats, but the rest of the games has the pass defense just been sort of lack of pressure?
Yeah, so the the defensive linemen, the edge rushers especially, would be the first to tell you that they think they probably should have more sacks this year than they have. There have been a lot of misses. There have been a lot of near misses where they are forcing the quarterback out of the pocket, and they just don't put him on the ground. Byron Vaughn's especially is a transfer from Texas before last season. He's been very good for 2 years now. He's been good this year too. He gets to the quarterback consistently. He just cannot put him on the ground for whatever reason. Can't put him on the ground. I think he's got 1 this year. Probably could have had 9 or 10. He's in there constantly, not putting him on the ground. Greshik has been really the only one at defensive end who has consistently brought the quarterback down when he's got to him. Vaughns can provide consistent pressure. He's a very good player. Patrick Joyner Jr. is a little bit more of a run stopper at defensive end than he is a pass rusher, but he has been capable on that front as well. Hale Motuapuaka at defensive tackle he's a very good athlete for as big as he is. He's not a true pass rusher, but they have guys in the trenches who can get to the quarterback, guys in the trenches who will force the quarterback out of the pocket, who will cause problems there. It has just been finishing those plays has been an issue for them, which is it has yielded some big plays. It has yielded some issues in the back end because Ephraim Banda he's a product of the Manny Diaz tree. And so he's blitzing a lot. He's frequently sending 5 or 6 guys, usually 5. And it can cause problems for guys on the back end. I think the cornerbacks here are very good. I think that in general, they have done a good job. I think that the safeties in general have done a good job. It has just been a matter of when the pass defense does get beat, it's usually because they got to the quarterback and didn't put him on the ground. That has been the biggest problem for the pass rush this year.
A couple more things before we let you go. I again, my knowledge of Utah State was that it was in Logan, Utah, but looking at the map, you've got Salt Lake City, Provo, Boise, Utah State, all kind of. Boise's a little further out, but what is the football atmosphere like? Like, we're aware of how much Utah and BYU really hate one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate BYU, but that's another podcast. Yeah. So what's that kind of because that's probably within like Salt Lake City, Provo, and Logan within a couple hours of each other. That's a lot of football. So what's kind of the vibe around there? Is Logan solidly behind Utah State, or are there a lot of split loyalties, being so close together?
Yeah, it's Utah State is definitely the smallest of the 3 in terms of fandom. Obviously, I mean, the other 2 are about to be Power 5 schools. One of them already is. BYU's reach is not necessarily just specific to Provo. Provo is a pretty small college town, but it's it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter that Provo is a pretty small town. Most people who are BYU fans don't live there anyway. And so the atmosphere generally, the environment is that the people in Logan like Utah State. The people in Logan root for Utah State, but Logan's not very big. Logan is largely the college and then a pretty small downtown on the other side of town. It's not a huge place. I would say the average this year, you get about 17,000, 18,000 at games, and it's not a huge stadium. It's not been sold out since game 1, basically, when they looked really bad against UConn and everybody kind of bailed after that. And then after watching them lose to an FCS team by 28, really bailed. But it's definitely a step behind. It's definitely a couple rungs down the ladder from BYU and from Utah, but it is not to say at all that Utah State is not passionate, that there is not interest, and that there is not a lot of frustration about the fact that both of those teams have canceled their series with Utah State in recent seasons. Utah several years ago, BYU this year was the last time that they have a game scheduled. And I have my own opinions about that being sort of cowardly, especially on BYU's part. But it is definitely something that people here are very frustrated about, because it's not like BYU beats Utah State every year. It's not. They don't. They do more often than they don't. But this is not a situation where it's like I'm from Columbus, Ohio originally. It's not a MAC school relative to Ohio State. It's not that level of down in the ditch. Like Utah State's not that far away. They're down. They're below BYU and Utah in the pecking order here, but there's passion here. There are fans here. There's interest in the football program and a lot of interest in football in general in this state. It is rapidly growing in the amount of interest in football, in the kind of product, the level of recruit that is being produced. It is a state on the rise for football production.
I don't know much, but BYU slander is always welcome in this house. Memphis has a little history with BYU, in case you didn't know. But anyway, so
they are cowards. If they can't win the game, they try to win the fight and usually lose that.
Yeah, try to sucker punch a tight end. Anyway, that's a whole different podcast. So, Patrick, how do you see Tuesday going in Dallas? What are your kind of closing thoughts here?
I think it's going to depend, like I said, largely on the Cooper Legas and Terrell Vaughn connection. They very nearly rode that to a pretty large comeback and a win over Boise State. Could not get that pulled off. Came up, 8 yards short, and then Boise State sort of put on a bunch of points really late in the game when it was already over. That was they were yards away from winning that game for the first time in a very long time. This is not a program that beats Boise State very often. That connection is dangerous. And I think that connection is going to determine how far Utah State can go in this game, how far it can go. Both guys are back next year, how far it can go next year. That is the connection to watch. Number 0 in the slot is the best player on the offense. How much they use him and how much he is able to get free is going to determine what Utah State can do here. Personally, I think that Memphis's speed and athleticism on the lines especially is probably going to be too much for Utah State to handle. I think that Utah State will have its big plays on offense, will have its moments where it can put points on the board, will have things to be excited about moving forward, but ultimately it has not been able to string together efficient, consistent drives all year, just has not been able to do it. And I don't know that the big moments are going to be enough to beat a Memphis team that is absolutely more talented on both sides of the ball. And I think that's probably true of the defense as well. Big plays, it can have the advantage, but on the down-to-down basis, I don't see it. So I think it's probably like a 34-24 kind of thing where Memphis wins, but Utah State has moments to be excited about, but just does not have the depth of talent yet to keep up.
So, Patrick, as we let you go here, tell everybody how they can keep up with Utah State this week.
Yeah, so if you're interested, you can go to www.theagship.com. That is my outlet that covers a whole bunch of Utah State stuff, but especially football will be coming up here this week, as well as at the Agship on Twitter. All one word there, just the AGGSHIP. Thank you guys again for having me on.
Hey, thanks a lot for joining us, and happy holidays to you and yours.
Yep, you guys too. Bye.
Awesome, thanks. Patrick Mayhorn from theagship.com joining us here tonight. We're going to have a special guest hopefully coming up here in just a couple of minutes. So I want to wrap kind of the bowl game talk up here. Bryan, we'll start with you. What time is the game? Is it 2:15 or 2:45? All I know is I got to be there all day.
2:15, I thought, without looking.
Yeah, I think it's 2:15. So I'll just give you real quick a couple things that concern me. Number one, special teams. That's a big concern because Utah State's really good at special teams. So maybe give me a concern and then tell me what you think that scoreboard will look like at the end of the night.
To me, a concern, my concern is basically the same as it been all year, the little things. Is this the game that Memphis shakes that little things bug, or will the little things keep creeping in? Because to me, on paper, Memphis should win this game easily, but it's because of the little things. Like we mentioned before, talking to him, their rush defense is 118th. I mean, Memphis should be able to run, but Memphis hasn't shown they can run consistently. The little things, blocking, just drop passes, just all these little things that have plagued Memphis this year. I want to see a complete game. I don't want to see the little things pop up, but I'm afraid they will pop up. So as far as a score, I think Utah State can keep it close. I know the line is 7.5. I don't think Memphis covers. I have Memphis winning though, 28-21.
Mr. Marley?
Well, I concur with just about everything Bryan said. I am very concerned about the special teams, John, just like you are. Field position in this game is going to be very critical because Bryan's right. We should be able to run the football, but boy, how many times have we said that this year, right? How many times have we said that, guys? I mean, a bunch. And we really haven't, other than one quarter against SMU, right? You know, I look at the way our defense has played this year. I'm fairly confident that we'll limit them offensively. I think that Memphis comes out and probably gets some early scores. This just feels like one of those games where we score early, get a little bit of a lead, they come back, and we hold them off. I'm going to say 31-27 Memphis. I think it's like 31-14 in the third quarter. This is the classic Ryan Silverfield game, right? We get to a big lead, and we just and we try to play not to lose, and they get a couple of late scores. But I ultimately do think that Memphis is just better offensively and defensively on both sides of the ball with talent. But I'll be 1,000,000% honest. I think Blake Anderson is the better coach in this matchup.
You know, I've had people tell me, oh, you know, Utah State's terrible. Well, what I just heard from Patrick sounds an awful lot like what we've been saying all year. Can't get over the hump. Can't do the little things well. Can't seem to put things together. Had high expectations coming into the year. I think this is an opportunity where Memphis is better on both sides of the football from an athletic standpoint. But, you know, Coach Silverfield made a comparison today, and it's obviously not in quality of opponent, but he said Utah State is a lot like Tulane, and they just line up and they just keep playing. They just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And, you know, it's going to be imperative for Memphis to not allow them to come back. Because I think you guys are right. I think Memphis maybe blitzes them a little bit early, you know, gets up 14, 21 points early. I've got Memphis 35-31, but I think it is one of those games. I think, Larry, you said it, where it's like 35-21 going into the fourth quarter, and they get a couple scores, and then Memphis kicks a field goal to kind of keep it at 10, and they just can't get over the hump. And Jeb's absolutely right. Seth Hennigan being able to run the football, we've got to rediscover who Caden Priestcorn is, and start finding him again after his season high of 6 catches. He didn't have more than 3 catches in any other game this year. So we've got to kind of find our rhythm again. You know, Coach said today, he said, you know, look, we've not run the kids in the dirt. You know, we've been active and we've been, you know, involved and focused, but we've not been running hard. He said, yes, we want to win. This is a bowl game. We want to win. We want everybody to come out healthy, and we want to have fun. And I just think Memphis is the better team. This is a case where Memphis is just better. Can Memphis lose? Absolutely. Memphis can lose if they go out and get outside their comfort zone with special teams. And if Memphis falls behind, I think that's a problem. But I think Memphis can win this game. And I think it's going to be one of those that you're going to look at the score and go, oh, Memphis only won by 4. And it's a game Memphis really kind of had in control and gave up a couple touchdowns late. So as far as weather, not going to be a factor. Sunny skies, depending on which forecast you look at, anywhere from the mid-50s to the low 60s. Slight wind. Going to beat the hell out of what we're going to see the next couple of days here at home. And Bryan, take it away.
Hello.
Hey, it's John Max. We've got Carmelo Overton here with us, one of the new Tiger signees. Carmelo, first of all, welcome to the Tiger program.
Thank you.
Good deal. Sorry about that. My had a little technical difficulty on my end. Carmelo, congratulations on signing with Memphis today. First off, talk about the recruiting process. When did Memphis first started recruiting you, and what were your thoughts about Memphis?
I say it started around March this year. Yeah, March. And ever since then, they just always stayed in contact. You know, never went into blue, nothing else like that. So it's been fun going through the process with them.
And who's your main coach that recruited you? Was it Coach Hankins?
Yeah.
What was that relationship like? How did you and Coach Hankins get along?
It's phenomenal. You know, his personality. I love him as a coach and as a person. So yeah.
And
So,
did you watch any game film this year from Memphis?
Um, we went a little bit through the defensive game scheme when I was up there 2 weeks ago, but other than that, not too much. But seen a couple plays here and there.
All right, Larry.
so Carmelo, we're watching
Or-
some of your film here. Tell Tiger fans what kind of linebacker can we expect to see when you suit up for Memphis?
All around linebacker, I can say that. One of the greatest to ever come. I'll say that too.
So tell me, what is your favorite play that you had in high school? Because we all have one. What's the favorite play?
Might go. Definitely.
Well, so what's maybe something you are most looking forward to about that trend, because it is a big transition, right, from high school to college. So what are
Yeah.
you maybe most excited about getting on a college campus for?
I say the one thing that I can't wait for is the first game of the regular season. The first game definitely, but you know, I'm looking as far as college as the next step of high school. Like, you know, like the same setup, but better. Cause I got a couple like cousins and friends and stuff that's in college right now. So
Now, when you came to your official visit, what all did you do when you went around to the city, and how impressed were you with Memphis?
we went and ate at Texas de Brazil. We ran around the facility, went around the campus, all that, talked about academics. I went to see like a couple of the players, like seeing how they lived and all of that too. So yeah, I loved it. It was fun. It was good.
I know Memphis has a couple of different uniform combos that they wear. Which one did you try on, and which one is your favorite?
Um, I tried on the black and blue. The black and blue was the ones that I tried on. But I feel like my favorite combos that Memphis have would probably be the black and white, like the Cincinnati Bengals type uniform.
Mhm.
Yeah, those probably my favorite. Between those ones and then the black and blue ones, definitely.
So before we let you go, who would you say, who do you kind of pattern the way you play after?
Um, Michael Parsons. That's who I strive to. That's who I watched a lot this
We
past
saw
couple.
him a lot personally. I can tell you that's a damn good guy to pattern after.
Yeah.
Well,
And but
Carmelo,
and
go ahead, Brian.
no, I was going to say before you get to Memphis, what's your goal? Do you want to improve on speed? Cut down on maybe some bad tendencies. What is your personal goal so when you get on Memphis, you can hit the ground running?
I mean, I feel like I feel like being a player and being able to go to the next level is always something that you can improve on, no matter what. No matter if you think that it's your best skill in your itinerary, you still got something to improve on. So I say everything all around. I just want to be a better player at the end of the day.
Well, Carmelo, thanks for taking a couple minutes to talk with us here, and welcome to the Tiger family. And looking forward to seeing you on campus.
Thank you. I'm
Good
looking
luck,
forward
young
to
man.
be there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Carmelo Overton joining us there very quickly tonight, and the Micah Parsons thing. I'm sorry, I kind of faded over here. I got some flashbacks
I
from
tell you
seeing that
what,
about
we
4
have
rows off the field.
PTSD from that, man.
Whew,
That dude,
that kid can play.
my
Um,
man. Whew.
So, as we kind of roll through Overton's film here, I just see aggression. Like, here's my wrestling point for tonight. Like John Cena said, ruthless aggression. He just seems like an attack guy, and I think that's perfect for a Matt Barnes defense, because he talks about that all the time, about how he wants to. I think Jalen Allen, what does he say? He red lines it. He's, full bore all the time. And, I think that's some of the things that Memphis got today. They got better and they got more aggressive. And I think that's really what they were looking for.
Yeah, and when you take a look at these players that they signed, they had some major offers. So I mean, it's not like all these kids are under the rate. No, some of these kids have legit offers. So instead of going to Tennessee or Auburn or something like that, I know Carmelo. I mean, he was rated 4-star at one point at Rivals, and then commits to Memphis. All of a sudden, he's a 3-star. I'm not going to say anything about that, but he had legit offers. Could have gone Power 5. Built that relationship with the Memphis staff, and he sees that he can build something special here. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him play. And linebacker, that's another position at Memphis that has a lot of young talent. I mean, when you take a look at that linebacker room, I know what 4 or 5 years ago that running back room had 4 NFL players on it. I think next year, or the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see this linebacker room. I think there's going to be a couple of players playing in the NFL from this linebacking core.
I cannot disagree with that.
I
So,
100% agree.
all right. Well, we got one more after this. I think we're going to try to be on next Wednesday. I'll be headed back from Dallas. I will be, of course, in Gerald Ford Stadium. And so I'll be there and ready to rock and roll on Tuesday. It's just so weird. Bowl season is so strange to say on Tuesday. And then we'll have one more show. Hopefully,
we're gonna talk about that. That's coming up. All right, I'm not letting that one go.
Yeah, well, we'll let Mike McIntyre have one every now and then.
No. Look, want versus need, fellas. And Roy, you stole my thunder because I was actually going to ask this before we left. Look, did we even go after Rowdy Beers? Because look, there is this want versus need. We need Rowdy Beers. We do. And for those who don't know, Rowdy Beers is an actual player, and God bless him, his actual name is Rowdy. His last name is actually Beers. If you could have one player in college, I don't care if he only runs out for one play a game, you must have Rowdy Beers on your roster. It's a requirement.
Here's something to think about. Rowdy, he's a wide receiver, isn't he?
I think
so. That or a linebacker, I think.
I couldn't remember.
I thought
it doesn't matter, guys.
Well, no. Here's what I'm saying. You get Rowdy Beers, and guess who's in the transfer portal? The coldest. Remember that?
The coldest.
You can have the coldest and Rowdy Beers on the same.
Well, no, you can have the coldest throwing to Beers. I mean, the coldest to Beers. I mean, that's it. That's all we did.
That would be problematic since they are both wide receivers. But I digress. Well, actually, Beers is a tight end.
Tight end. Okay.
The coldest Henderson is a. I could go down the litany of great football and basketball names. Of course, Tank Jakes.
Tank Jakes was awesome.
That's a great linebacker name. It's like you got that guy. It's like,
well, and his actual name was Brontavious, which is better than Tank. But anyway,
hard to go wrong. Yeah. So we will be back. It should be next Wednesday. I should be back, and we'll run it back for the final time in the 2022 season. So Memphis can. You work. So I talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? Like you work so hard, and Memphis will play their 13th game, and this will probably be hour 50. Like you work so hard for 50 hours of actual on-field football, and it's one of the most unfair things in sport. But hey, there's no such thing with the transfer portal, with NIL, with roster movement. There's no such thing as the offseason anymore. So college football has finally moved to that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year model. I asked Coach Silverfield today, I said, have you had a chance to think? And the question was going to be, have you had a chance to kind of reconcile what your emotions will be, being that some of those guys like Quindell Johnson, this will be the last time you coach them, when that clock hits zero. And I said, so have you had a chance to think? No. Like that was, no, it's the first answer because there is no time anymore, and I think the portal is open through mid-January, I believe.
I believe it's mid-January. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you close for a couple months, there are a couple weeks, and then you've got signing day and you'll have roster movement, we saw it. The portal didn't, contrary to popular opinion, the portal didn't open until early December. But you had guys in September announcing they were going into the portal.
Mhm.
There's no off season. There's no stopping the train. The train just rolls on down the track. So just because we just have one more show for the year, who knows what the new year will bring.
Yep.
So for the best co-host in all the land, Bryan Moss, Larry Marley, this is John Maddox signing off. I will talk to everybody on Tuesday from the First Responder Bowl in Dallas, Texas. Until then, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we will see everybody